your hornographic uncle does Hollywood. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. The age of JJ and his acolytes are over. Yeah, I think it's coming near a close. I don't know about over, but these days of big projects and big deals and all that stuff, I think have kind of hit a brick wall. What do you say, Andre? Chris? Culture?
I wonder what Chris has to say.
Yeah.
On what? Sorry, I was
on JJ Abrams, Bad Robot, and all of the acolytes coming from the Bad Robot school of filmmaking, like the Rings of Power showrunners. I mean, the Bad Robot alumni have gotten some very, very high-profile projects that have failed in spectacular, very visible ways.
Well, I think
they've been losing projects left and right, haven't they?
Well, yeah, but I mean, look, I think after The Force Awakens, for me, that revealed JJ Abrams to be a fraud, and anyone affiliated with him is, to me, equally guilty. So I don't understand how his company and other people affiliated with it continue to get projects. I think, that whole thing that people fail upwards in entertainment. I think that's true, particularly in the corporate space. And I do think there is something to, and I've seen this in the festival world, where you meet someone who's wildly talented, but they're terrible in a room, meaning they can't articulate a creative vision. And I think that it's sort of the opposite with JJ and his team. Is they're very good at, like, here's, the thing we're pitching you. They're so good at the sales, but then not at the actual execution of the project. I think
they're politicians.
Yeah, they're politicians.
Masterful politicians.
So it's you do have to be that in Hollywood. The most creative and the best qualified don't actually succeed. You need to have I always say, you kind of have to have a balance of the left brain and the right brain, like being wildly creative, but then also being able to be a business person. I mean, that's why, to me, the most successful person in Hollywood is Steven Spielberg.
I was just going to say that.
He's able to balance both sides. He is masterful when it comes to business, marketing, being tapped into the zeitgeist, and creatively, he's got a very good track record. Not everything is a home run. Spielberg has had his share of duds, but the successes far outweigh the duds, for sure.
Well, and a good example of his being a politician and also being able to do the commercial side of things, right, is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If it wasn't for him, that movie would have never happened. Yes. It practically saved Disney Studios. And the only reason I say that is because he was able to correlate between Warner Brothers and Disney and get it done. Something that'll never happen again, probably. At least not to that extent. And at that time, it was thought to be impossible as it was. So, like, that's a great example of how his politics and his creativity smushed together, and what it spawned was that.
Yeah, same thing with Ready Player One. I like the book quite a bit, Ready Player One. I'm not a fan of the movie. I think the movie's kind of a weak retelling of the book.
And that's where I think he was too self-aware of himself through that movie, yeah.
Exactly. But having said that, all the different brands and icons and franchises that were kind of woven, it got a little overkill at that sort of Endgame-like ending. Was sort of just like, okay, we get it. Like,
well, that's probably the closest we're ever going to get to that ever again is that. Yeah, you're right.
For sure. So.
Indeed. But yeah, as far as the age of JJ accolades culture.
Yeah, I think it's drawn to a close. I'm sorry. I mean, he didn't have a lot left on the table at Warner. This was like one of the last things. And in the video that you guys did earlier today, or released earlier today, Andre said it correctly. I mean, it's basically they're kicking him out the door, for lack of a better way to describe it. And, and as Chris said, I mean, he's been exposed for what he is, and all of his acolytes are the same thing. I don't know that any of them were ever truly creative. I mean, because once JJ gets something started, he can't finish it, and that's not a good rep to have either. But we'll see. I mean, Star Trek looks like garbage. The only person that's doing anything that remotely resembles that is Akiva Goldsman, right?
And he's one of his acolytes who probably is somewhat talented, but he only seems talented when he's around other good writers too.
Well, but again, that's some of the putting a good team together is really important. So, and that's a skill that a lot of these people don't seem to manage, right? I mean, you see people who don't belong in those positions. We were talking about failing upward, or Chris was, and Kathleen Kennedy would be one of those. She starts 1,000 projects and does the same thing. So it's not like but the problem is these people are everywhere. They're pervasive in Hollywood now, and they're in positions of authority. And for whatever reason, they're looked at in high regard, and they just shouldn't be.
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that the window has closed on them yet, because I mean, there's a lot of levels of bad jobs in Hollywood.
Long way out the door. Yeah.
But in this case, I think as far as the high profile stuff that JJ and some of his acolytes have gotten in the past, I don't see that happening as much anymore. Not to the extent it was. Yeah.
Rings of Power was extremely destructive.
The Batman as well.
That one too, but especially the Rings of Power. But also, I'd like to add some clarity to failing upwards, because it's so easy to say. But here's like the thing: if you or I or most others fail, we're not going to fail upwards. We're going to fail right down the drain. The only ones who are in the position to fail upwards are those that already have some extensive networks or contracts in play, which means that it's going to be very awkward or very expensive to get rid of them, which is why they are instead promoted to their level of highest incompetence, according to the Dilbert principle. But that only applies, again, if you have contracts and if you have connections. And this is kind of like what you see with Bad Robot. I mean, they're a fucking hydra with heads everywhere. That's how they're able to fail upwards, because they've infiltrated so many studios at so many different levels. But when the gig is up, then it's unraveling, and it's unraveling fast. And I think there's more and more awareness that JJ Abrams was all hype. He did reboots that looked very glitzy, that the industry thought that fans must surely appreciate. But especially after The Force Awakens, more and more recognized that all the stuff that JJ Abrams touches and reboots and revitalizes, it doesn't stay vital. On the contrary, it ends up deader than it ever was before long.
I mean, if the whole audience was perpetual 12-year-old boys, I'm sure that, JJ Abrams and Michael Bay would be making movies till the end of time, and Zack Snyder for that matter. But, sooner or later, the shit catches up with them.
Yeah, I think ultimately people have realized that the mystery box is empty and hollow. And if you don't have an answer for that, I mean, that's it.
Honestly, I think if it was empty and hollow, people would accept it more. I think it's full of shit. Like in all senses of the term, right? Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
At least if it's empty, it's a bit of a subversion of expectations. But if you open the box and it's full of shit, well, right there is like a double entendre in and of itself, right? So there you go.
Yeah, I like to refer to JJ Abrams as the reverse King Midas. Where King Midas, for those that do not know the tale, everything he touched turned to gold, eventually to his own detriment. But JJ Abrams, everything he touches turns to shit. And I was someone that used to like what he did. And you can even see like earlier videos on this channel. I'm like, oh, cool, it's him. Cool, it's going to be awesome. But boy, was I wrong about that. Luckily, I came to my senses. And it would appear eventually, so is the industry.
Well, I mean, actually, I would put it this way, because he's been so destructive to so many things. It's a box of broken toys. That's
that too.
Yeah. But while we are on this topic, since we have delay that super chat a little bit, Tom. Since we are on this topic, this whole thing started, of course, because we have a new Constantine movie coming.
That's right.
With Keanu Reeves returning to the title. Tom, for those that came in late after we started this, can you just repeat what you said you had heard about how this Constantine movie came to be?
Well, yeah, like the shortest version is when we heard about, was it Demimonde and the Batman animated project, all those things, I guess they learned at the same time were not happening.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I don't know if these were negative pickup deals or if he had to buy them back from the studio, but basically he decided he's taking all these pilots elsewhere because that's part of his first look contract or whatever that he does have with Warner Brothers. But that's the catch, is they don't have to pay him unless they take the shows. So in response to him taking all these shows elsewhere, I don't know what they're going to do about Batman and some of the other stuff, but their response to the whole Constantine thing was that they're just bringing back Keanu Reeves because of the whole, it's Keanu Reeves. And right now he's hotter than he probably ever has been, if you really want to think about it. So it makes complete sense on paper. And this is part of Zaslav. I'm sure if Zaslav had any big part of this plan, from what it sounded like he did, he was just like, yeah, let's just do that instead. Because this whole thing was kind of destroyed from his exclusive deals and shit. And that's what they're trying to get away from, because that's what I heard. One of the big points of contention with Zaslav was JJ and his exclusive deals that he likes to have. And I don't know if Andre wants to expand on that, but Culture, you were about to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, to be honest with you, I believe that the straw that broke the camel's back when Zaslav was coming in was the amount of money that Demimonde was going to cost the studio. It was exorbitantly overpriced.
And I've also heard they have the similar exclusive deals with the contracts with the Batman as well. So.
Yeah, because that is what JJ Abrams and Bad Robot does, or what they do. As part of their deal, they want exclusivity. They demand that every other competing iteration of the character is shut down. And this is what happened with Constantine. I know that Matt Ryan, he has many fans as Constantine. I'm a fan of his interpretation of it. I'm not a fan of what the CW producers have done and the situations they have put him in. But I think that he could be an amazing Constantine if placed in the right project. And he has been public about this too. That's like his wet dream. And he literally dreamt about this, is being in a Joker-style R-rated movie about Constantine. That's his dream project. But that wasn't to happen, because the moment when development began on JJ Abrams' Constantine by Nigerian actor Sope Derisu, then the character of Constantine went into moratorium, meaning he was written out of the CW and Legends of Tomorrow. Matt Ryan was awkwardly recast mid-season into another role so that they wouldn't have to pay him without doing anything. They just recast him to something else while Constantine was written out.
It's probably because he was under contract, I imagine, too.
They could pay him out without
why pay him out? And the CW's got to save some fucking money, man.
Exactly.
They're going to put his ass to work.
Exactly. That's what they did. And meanwhile, over on Netflix, they were actually planning. What I have heard there is that they were planning on using John Constantine and have Taron Egerton reprise the role from the audio play, because he did amazing there. But those plans, they went down the drain when JJ Abrams basically hugged Constantine for himself. And that's when they went into the gender bending route. And hey, we have one Johanna Constantine in the past. Let's just use her in the future as well for maximum confusion. That's how that happened. And now he's lost Constantine. So, Chris, having heard that setup, what do you think that this means, both for JJ Abrams' future in the industry, and as well as Keanu Reeves and his return to Constantine? What could the future repercussions be of that?
Well, one, I'm excited about Keanu Reeves just because I think he'd be good for so many things. They're just I'm just glad Keanu Reeves is doing that. So that's great. Number one. But number two, I feel like JJ Abrams is kind of like a villain at the end of a James Cameron movie. You think it's dead and it's not dead, and it keeps coming back. It rears its ugly head. So and he can point to past successes, although they get further and further distant, but he can always point to past successes like, the 2009 Star Trek. For the most part, people enjoy that film. And then the rest of the films, I think, have just not been good.
I better not point to Beyond, which positively bombed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it did, but
although I like that movie, full disclosure.
Of course, and then what's her face later, Emma Watts, discovered that basically his movies didn't make any more than the original films did, but they cost twice as much. But anyway, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it's weird. You can point to like there are certain people that just defy the odds by like having things that fail, but they continue to work. And I think part of it is, again, things that we don't see, like presentation, marketing and promo decks, and the way things are financed. Like we're not. It's sort of invisible to us, So I don't know. He has a way of selling a project that studios are responsive to, and other people are not quite as impressive. And he can always point to, past successes. So I don't think he's going away.
No, he's not going away completely, but I do think he's going down a level. I think he's going down from the absolute height of the A-list and to the working director, whose project gets more press because of past fame, but he's no longer going to be able to do everything he wants.
And it should be noted that he is still attached as executive producer, but I think that's more of a consolation.
That's a contractual deal, yeah. Because
that's what I kind of was getting at earlier too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So JJ Abrams and Bad Robot and Minghella, for that reason, while they are attached to the new Constantine movie, they have no input on it whatsoever. It's a pure marquee credit. As you mentioned earlier, Tom, this is a project that, depending on how you interpret it, can be seen as a slight to him. So why would he have any creative input on it whatsoever? He can't monetize it. It goes against the Bad Robot model. This is a continuation that he has no ownership in, so why waste time on it?
Mm-hmm.
Although Akiva is still right. Akiva wrote the original too, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did. I mean, that's why you had like this Holy Cross shotgun. I mean, that's an Akiva Goldsmanism right there. But I'm not too worried about him writing the sequel. I mean, maybe in the years that has gone by since, he has learned more about how to stay true to the source material. Maybe he has read some more of the comics. Maybe the sequel will be based on Rake at the Gates of Hell. That's the sequel story to the original story, Dangerous Habits, that the original movie was a very, very loose adaptation of. So that could be interesting. Because I do hope that Peter Stormare, who was Lucifer in the original, and I have to say, I personally think he's the best on-screen Lucifer we've ever seen. I know that many prefer Viggo Mortensen in The Prophecy as the best on-screen Lucifer ever, but personally, I think
don't forget Al. Never forget Al.
Yeah. Come to think of it, Scandinavians do really good Lucifers.
I'd have to say, Devil's Advocate, speaking of Keanu, don't forget Al Pacino played it.
Yeah, and Al Pacino as well.
She had a great ass, and your head was right up it.
but still, I personally think that Peter Stormare, he was a Lucifer in a league of his own. And I would love to see him return for the sequel. See more of the family there.
Would be hilarious if they got Al Pacino for a little cameo, though, considering Keanu. But anyhow, moving on from that. No,
Lucifer from the multiverse.
Yeah.
Have him show up in the Flash or something.
What, you don't like this form? I think it'd be interesting. It could be fun. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Again, I know more from you, Andre, that Keanu's version is not the comic book version per se, but it does have a cult following.
What I will say about it, I see it very much the same way as Arnold Schwarzenegger's Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah,
It
that's a good comparison. Yeah,
it is not the original Conan, and it is not the original Constantine. It is something else entirely. But it does capture just enough of the spirit of the original, and it's damn good in its own right, even if it's not the original.
Yeah. And Forbes seems to think this is a bit of a risk. And let's be real, it is kind of a risk because the first film wasn't a huge box office success. But what it did do is do well on video. And you got to remember, this movie came out in the height of the DVD craze.
Yeah.
People have to remember that. So there's a lot of people who've probably not only seen this movie, own this movie.
Yeah.
So that may be a big reason to as well decide to go this route. I don't know if Chris, you want to comment on that at all either, but one person who talked about this was in our the time period that this would have been post 9/11, when a lot of people were quite not comfortable with traveling yet, so a lot of people would invest in home theaters, and a lot of people were buying DVDs. DVDs were selling by the truckloads at that time. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's like the best-selling DVDs, the numbers are pretty sad. So it's unfortunate. Yeah. I mean,
but I got to imagine they looked at the numbers and saw that this was a big seller, was my point. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, it's just unfortunate that market is it's not the, it's not the revenue stream that it used to be, for sure.